As most of you already know, the important exercise of documenting experiments, lab processes, evaluations, observations, data, and results in a notebook remains a basic requirement in most research organizations. This information may stand as evidence of ownership of discoveries and innovations, act as an audit trail for how samples and products are handled, as well as a way to help enforce security and regulatory compliance. However, as both discovery and technology have gotten more complex, so have the record-keeping and regulatory and legal requirements that guide them. Scientists conducting discovery experiments, development, as well as other types of research are still in many cases using paper-based laboratory notebooks to keep vital records. These records constitute one of the most valuable intellectual assets that a research organization can own. And there is hardly any aspect of experimentation that has not been touched by computers. And today's laboratory does not operate in isolation. What happens in the lab is just part of the broader overall business process, and the technologies used to manage laboratory information need to be integrated to satisfy the organization's IP management requirements. Implementing an electronic lab notebook can therefore bring fundamental change to a number of different parts of the organization and the way laboratory data is used, managed, and protected. And so to learn more about how Neudesic solutions can help organizations capture, manage, communicate, and protect lab information, I'm pleased to turn the floor over this afternoon, to Mr. Bob Long. Bob, the floor is yours.
Hello, Rich. A wonderful intro. Thank you. Hello, everyone, and good morning and good afternoon. It's a little of both. We want to thank everyone for joining us. And what we're going to do today, as Rich has pointed out, talk to you about our electronic lab notebook. It's offered by Neudesic. And my colleague Sean Collette and I will present. I'll do a little bit of slide introduction, and then we'll have a live solution demo from Sean. And so this is what the agenda looks like. We'll talk a bit about the problem space and what the vision is, where we've come so far, where we're going, how the plans came about. We'll see the product. We'll recap a little bit from a benefit standpoint, and then look to you for some interaction and make a few closing remarks. And we're very keen today on having you interact. And as a matter of fact, what I'd like to do is put up a profile slide for just a couple of minutes. And this will allow you to indicate to us what your particular needs might be and allow us to adapt in certain occasions, and then certainly lead into a Q&A session at the very end. So we encourage you to, you should see a polling slide up there for how this might assist your organization. So I'll give you a moment for that. Okay. And if you've had a chance to answer, now I'll go ahead and go into the presentation. And firstly, this is the team. You met Rich. I'm Bob Long. I look after the healthcare practice for Neudesic. And joining me is Sean Collette. And of course, you've met Katie Churm. And just a moment or two on the background of Neudesic. Interesting name selection. It's a combination of Neuron and Geodesic, becoming Neudesic. And we have worked on multiple continents, offices across the U.S. Over 300 companies have become clients in the 9 years or so of our existence, and we work across life sciences as well as provider and payer space in terms of our healthcare practice. And we've run 5 years of 100% growth. We've been ranked one of the top 200 fastest growing private companies in the United States. And right below that is mention of VTS. It's a Virtual Tech Specialist program, abbreviated, pardon us. But that's related to our core competency, which is connecting applications. And out of that grew our abilities at SharePoint and other practices, which I mentioned here on this slide, just to give you a little feel for how this all comes together. So we'd like to think more than in terms of pure technology, all of it, of course, built on Microsoft, but we bring solutions to the market that we believe are well-defined and very valuable, and we choose that area of need very carefully. We do complement offerings for scientists in areas of, say, business intelligence, and in the provider space, patient satisfaction, so-called service recovery, that sort of thing. So we're widespread in the healthcare space. And today, concentrating on lab notebook capability, we wanted to open up with a little bit about the industry challenges that are out there. If you think in terms of biopharma or traditional pharmaceuticals or research at universities, there's generally a notion of a pipeline. Rich made a little mention of this. So there's discovery phase, and then you drive through for years perhaps to bring something to market and into clinical trials and eventual translation in everyday use. And there's pressure to get that done. Getting that out the back end, approved, and into the market affects the bottom line. So great deal of attention on that. And there's all the while a regulatory environment that keeps the pressure high on reporting and the ability to archive information. And that's really what drives the vision of what we've built. And ultimately, research scientists, valuable people throughout any of these organizations, the top people are difficult to find, retain. Skill sets are accumulated over many years, so there's that human capital factor that makes it difficult, challenging, but interesting to get all of this done in the market. And one of the things in terms of that efficiency that we're trying to drive that we thought would be interesting this morning is we have among our practices a focused user experience group, again abbreviated here UX, but that team of specialists concentrates on ease of use and navigation through a system like this. So what we've found with our initial customer base is that the systems out there are quite complex, difficult to learn, and our user acceptance testing that occurs at the end of a deployment has often been even curtailed. If we offer a day or a couple of days, they're done in about a half a day because the navigation is so simple, so straightforward. We've thought through what people need to do their jobs, and we build that in, and they find their way around quite smoothly. Now, a couple of things about an area of concentration of ours. I've mentioned pharma and biomedical. One of the things that's very current in the industry is a lot of acquisitions, and that means that collaboration tools are mixed, and to get these people back on the bench and doing science is critical. And so the ease of adoption plays into that. Microsoft brings to us wonderful technology solutions for structured, unstructured data, for OpenXML, this sort of thing. So the underpinning of what we've built is very strong and will take you well into the future. And part of that is we do also partner with companies in certain cases, and the idea that these documents, which we'll get into, these journals for the scientists are extremely valuable, as Rich pointed out, and the ability to effectively store them and then call them back up. We've talked to clients who may record as many as 15,000 experiments a month. And so there's not only a scalability factor, but just a productivity side of this, which is how do you find those documents? If you've ever tried to find one of your own documents that you create and put in a directory and then go back and look later, you can imagine the problem across thousands of scientists, for instance. And we like to think of this as being an open system whereby other needs in the research environment can be met, and want to, again, bring everything to the ultimate goal, helping people, the wellness of people, helping them feel better, so bringing things into everyday clinical use. Now, the actual design goals, we thought that the full power of Microsoft Office needs to be exploited, again, driving that adoption factor, and our ability to tag, index, and then search documents is key. And then ultimately there are some absolutes that have to happen in a system like this. The ability to secure it through digital signaturing and follow standards. And the big factor in this is that the IP that's present in these journals through the passage of the, from front to back on the pipeline, that's more and more and more important, and the scientists are encouraged to sign and store and later the IP protection that needs to occur is every day. Rather than the chore or the downtime, productivity issues associated with signing are highly automated. Now, these just a quick view as to the platform elements themselves. As you see, highly exploiting SharePoint Server 2007. Office, as I mentioned, we did use at a coding level Visual Studio Tools for Office, VSTO. And these few elements combined to not only be powerful, but people are going to be working in an environment they're familiar with, and that drives the adoption, obviously. It's the biggest part of the formula. If anything has held up successful implementations in the past, it has been that the scientists perhaps even fall back to their paper notebooks because it's just too difficult to use the system. So at this point, we want to detail a little bit for you what these tools are accomplishing and what the flow is. And for the technical aspects of what we've done for the live demo, I'm going to give the floor to my colleague, Sean Collette. And appreciate your attention. And Sean, the floor is yours.
Sure thing. Well, thank you, Bob. I appreciate that. Hello, everyone. Just to jump right into things, I wanted to, well, actually before jumping into things, I want to give a little bit of background on myself and describe my involvement within this ELN solution. I've been involved in it as a business analyst and a project manager since early 2007. So we've been working on this for quite some time now. Really, that was time when SharePoint 2007 and Office 2007 with its OpenXML and all these compliance standards built into it really started coming onto the scene, and a few people started opening their eyes and asking questions if this really fit the tale and if we could develop an ELN around it. So throughout a number of months, number of years, had the opportunity to work with scientists, research managers, research directors, patent attorneys, as well as a number of architects and life sciences team at Microsoft to walk through the architectural design and the business design to come up with the solution that you'll see in a little bit. But before we jump into the demo, I think it makes sense to kind of walk through the major components architecturally to make up this solution. And it's really three different systems. The first, if you look at the upper left-hand part of the slide and work our way around clockwise, really the organizational piece of it is SharePoint. Certainly no surprise to anyone, right? It really houses the taxonomy. It's a filing system for all of the experiments, the details, the journals. It has an enterprise search system, which of course can be improved by integrating other certain tools like FAST. It handles workflow, it handles archiving, and of course a lot of the regulatory compliance measures such as auditing and versioning. Working our way around to the little number 2 button, Microsoft Word in this solution is used as the experiment journal, if you relate yourself to the paper world, where all of the experiment details are documented, where images are inserted, you can have graphs and tables, and really anything that you can do in Word, you can have within this experiment journal. So really the scientist lives in Word, and then they save it back to SharePoint. And moving, that actually moves us into the whole third step where you have a conversion and signing service. And you'll see in the slide that this really isn't detailed out as much, and the reason for that is because there are several options for which you can implement this based on your business's investments. So if you're a large organization and you already went down the road of PKI infrastructure, with the way SharePoint is architected with web services, you can easily integrate with those. Otherwise, if you're just getting into the whole digital signing piece, conversion service, certainly we have recommendations of how you can pursue that and different options based on your business needs. So when you're in Microsoft Word and you want to sign a document and post it back to SharePoint, it's just a matter of clicking a button, providing your password, and then Windows Workflow Foundation really takes it the rest of the way in terms of converting it to a PDF, maybe converting it to an XPS, which is a newer Microsoft format that is similar to PDF but based on XML on the back end, and applying a digital signature on top of that, then posting it back to SharePoint to be indexed, backed up, and archived for protection in the long run. So with that, I will jump into the demo and go ahead and share my desktop. All right. Well, as we jump into this, you'll see this is the ELN homepage, which looks very similar to any other SharePoint site you'll see. And one of the things that we focused on when architecting and designing the solution from a user experience perspective, which Bob talked about earlier, was really a simplified design. So when users came to the site, they could very quickly and easily locate the different materials or the different artifacts they needed to click on to find their information or find the work that they needed to perform. So the simplified look of this, although under the covers are fairly complex, is to be very simple on the front end. So if we move to the upper right-hand corner, you can see that I'm logged in as a system administrator. I wanted to be logged in as an administrator just for the demo purposes in the beginning to see that really this is just SharePoint in the back end. Certainly there is an administrative section here that only is accessible by administrators. We took a lot of care in walking through the architecture and design to make sure that there's as little administration as possible. Of course, with many pieces of software, there is a little administration involved, but it's really just a matter of around managing security, managing notebooks, experiments themselves, but we try to keep that to a minimum. I'm not going to go into that area within this demo, but I certainly just wanted to point out the fact that it exists. Now, a lot of the security as well is taken care of through when you create notebooks in terms of automatically deciding what sort of security patterns to apply, but also with SharePoint, you can certainly manage all of the security yourself at a very granular level if need be. So I'll go ahead and log in as a different user now. Log in as Sue the Scientist, and when her page loads, you can see that the administrative section on the left here is gone. Everything, of course, within SharePoint is security trimmed. So if you're not an administrator, if you don't have heightened privileges, you're only going to see the information you need to see. Of course, as a business, the ELN its main goal, its core goal, is to protect information. So we took and take security very seriously when developing this to make sure that users that aren't supposed to see data don't see data. But if you do collaborate with other people within the system, that you can get access to the different experiments, the different tools that you need in order to work efficiently. So looking in the middle here, we have what's called an experiment finder web part, where you can very quickly search by different pieces of metadata attached to the experiment to find what you need. And below that, we have this concept of notebooks, which we carried over from the paper notebook world. So really what a notebook is simply a container of other experiments. And it's really a taxonomy element. So when we were talking with the scientists and talking with the business owners about how to structure this, we realized that they collaborate on two different levels and potentially a third. The first two are project-based, of course, and the second is department-based. So a notebook can represent a project or a department, depending on how your business wants to define it. And the third piece, which we can get down into in a little bit, would be actually personal innovation. So it is possible that an individual user could have a notebook, but it depends on your business to decide, do I want each individual to have a notebook, or would each individual have a space within their department notebook to do personal innovation and creative experiments. So if I am Sue the Scientist, I'll go ahead and click into this notebook, allergy and respiratory. So we land on the notebook landing page. And again, we have this kind of pervasive web part up here that's called the experiment finder that quickly shows for quick, efficient findability your last 5 experiments. Now you can toggle this drop down to see my last 5 experiments, all of my recent experiments, or all experiments on the site. So in case other users do have access to this notebook, you can collaborate around different experiments. And this is simply a very quick way to jump to an experiment that you were recently working on. Now below that, we have this concept called notebook groups. And originally, we were going to simply store all experiments within a notebook, similar to how paper notebooks work. But as in talking to the scientists and working through the user experience and architectural design, they said, hey, we actually have a lot of long-running projects and a lot of projects or departments that have a lot of experiments, so we're still concerned about findability. And if you store all experiments under that one notebook, we're just concerned that over time it's going to become hard or inefficient to work. So we came up with a concept called groups, which is in itself a fairly nebulous term on purpose, so that a group can really represent anything or any container that you want it to. So for a project, it could represent smaller units of the project in case a given scientist simply works on a very small piece of a project. They can go directly to the group, they can bookmark that group, and they can refer to it often where there is a limited number of experiments and they can quickly find what they need to find. If your notebook is based on a department, the individual users, if you do have a concept of personal innovation within your business, each user could have their own group. So there's a couple of business decisions for people to make if a notebook makes sense for a group, or if a notebook makes sense for personal innovation, or if a group makes sense to personal innovation. So we'll go ahead and click on in pulmonary hypertension. And this is the group landing page. So if I was a scientist, I need to drill down from the home page into a notebook and into a group in order to, as you can see on the left-hand side, if I want to create a new experiment, I have the ability to go ahead, click on it, and provision a new experiment. Now, before I click on that, I just wanted to mention a couple of interesting points with SharePoint and the fact that it's based on web services. There is no direct need to drill all the way down from the home page to a notebook to a group. If you have other systems within your organization that are wrapped with web services, or you can easily integrate with them, you could add functionality to that system. If it's, for example, a research system, and you knew about an experiment or a piece of a project that you're working on, you could place a button within that application to link directly from there to a group or to a notebook or even to an experiment after it's been provisioned. Another example of where you might link directly from another application is if you've already invested in SharePoint within your business and you have a number of collaboration sites around projects or departments, you could put a navigational link to link directly to the notebook or the group, which is just another efficiency mechanism so people don't have to drill down specifically from the ELN homepage. They can have context from within where they are, wherever they're coming from and going to. So if I go ahead and click experiment, I'll go to the create experiment page. And we really want, again, this kind of pervasive theme throughout the solution is user experience. So in no way, shape, or form do we want to slow down or ask a scientist for more information than we need in order for them to quickly navigate through the system. So we took a lot of care in terms of building the system to collect as much data smartly as possible without requiring the scientist to enter it. That way they can focus more on what their main specialty is, which is science. Their main specialty certainly isn't SharePoint or working with applications. So here, if we type in an experiment name, you can see that I've typed this in a few times before. Really, all we ask for is an experiment title and an experiment template, which is another efficiency concept, which was derived for this solution, where when the user works within Word, we want to set up a template for them, or really just an outline of a document that gets them maybe 60% of the way there based on what their experiment deals with. So if you have a certain header that you like within your business, if you have other headers, tables, identifying information for the experiment, setup information, analysis information, conclusion, it's all supposed to be set up in a certain structured way or best practice way. You can develop a template within your business for users to select, and like I said before, get them hopefully 60% of the way there so they don't have to recreate it every single time. And there is a concept of global templates, which are, of course, global to the enterprise. And departments experiment-based templates where within your department, perhaps you have certain flavors of templates that you like to work with. As we go down the screen, there's one more ask of the user when they're creating an experiment, which is to identify the co-authors. And really what this does when it provisions the experiment is identify who else is directly collaborating with you on this experiment. So if you have other scientists or other lab technicians that should have right access to this experiment, they should be identified here. Otherwise, what they're going to have is read access as long as they have permission to the notebook. If they don't have permission to the notebook, then they don't have access at all. You can simply enter the scientist name here. It's a standard SharePoint control where you can actually search for names and validate names and click Initiate. And what this does, I'm not going to do it for the demo purpose because this is running on a VPC and it might be a little bit slow. But what it does is it will actually collect all the information, go out and grab it from different disparate systems, Active Directory, apply all the metadata, and what you get at the end is this experiment site. So within SharePoint, each experiment has its own site. Now, the evolution in thinking about this was originally we thought that each experiment could be a Microsoft Word document and you simply store that within a document library within SharePoint. But we quickly realized there's a number of different pieces or documents or pieces of metadata associated with an experiment that really expand the concept of one simple document. So we went with the concept of a site. So as you're looking around this, you can certainly see on the left-hand side of the main body of the page, there's a number of pieces of metadata shown, a little link that you click to open up the journal itself in Microsoft Word to document your conclusions. And on the right-hand side, there's signed experiments. If you sign an experiment and post it back to SharePoint, it'll show up here. If you co-sign an experiment, it'll show up down here. And really, it was important to us to be able to have the author sign the experiment as often as possible. So all of these document libraries are audited. They're all versioned. But simply what shows up here is the latest version within the document library. And the last thing on the bottom here is a supplementary file. So any additional files that are associated with the experiment but not directly signed themselves would go in the supplementary files document library. So if I were a scientist, if I were a student scientist, and I wanted to open up this in Word, I would simply click this link. And again, it can take a few seconds to load this. So I preloaded it before the demo. I'm just going to simply click on it right here. I'll reshape it there, resize it. And as you can see, this is simply Microsoft Word. We have all the standard ribbons that you'd normally find in Microsoft Word. We actually have one additional element here, which is the ELN ribbon. Now, diving into the architectural specifications here, again, we wanted to take a lot of care in the user's experience, but also the business experience in owning this application. So this installation is a very thin client installation. There is no thick client info required. It's simply a configuration within Word. So the first time a user opens an experiment, there will be a couple automatic installs that take no more than 10 to 15 seconds per user. And then when any updates occur, if you want to add more buttons to this ribbon or change this ribbon, you simply push out a release to SharePoint, and then the next time a user opens up the journal, they'll automatically get all those features, which is a fairly nice thing, in my opinion. It's a really, really elegant solution. So that means that since this is associated with the experiment itself, whenever a user opens up a normal Word document within their station, they wouldn't have this ELN ribbon. They would only have this ELN ribbon if they went to the ELN itself, provisioned the experiment, and opened the experiment itself. So you can see, since I selected this blank template, it gave me this default template with the title. Bob's name is on it. I have a nice little header here. And in essence, just a blank canvas because it was a blank template. So I can type whatever I want. So this is my analysis. And then you can just hit the ground running. Another efficiency gain that we thought of beyond templates themselves, as I work my way through this ribbon up here of special functionality, I'm going to leave the signing until the end, but if I go right next to it, there's a whole concept of fragments. So a fragment beyond a template can be thought of as building blocks within a Microsoft Word document. So anything that you can select within the document itself can be considered a fragment, and that can be a couple paragraphs of text. It can be images. It can be tables. It could be digital signatures. Really anything that you can import and put into here can be considered a fragment. That way, if you're a scientist and you create something that you really like, and it's a table you use over and over and over again, but it's really not common enough to be put in a template, you could save it as a fragment for you to use later, or for you to share with colleagues that have access to your notebook. And if it doesn't contain confidential information, you can reuse it in a tighter space. So if I wanted to save this, all I would have to do is select it, click Save Selection, and provide a name and a description. So if I wanted to save my header and give it a little bit of metadata for searchability, I could do that. I could click Save. There's a nice little processing window that pops up to tell you that it's working. Certainly all of these buttons within the ribbon actually connect back with the SharePoint installation itself. So all of your interactions in terms of defining metadata, pulling additional information, saving it back, all interact within SharePoint. So if I'm a scientist and I create a new experiment, I want to go ahead and pull up some of these fragments that I've saved before to get myself from maybe 60% of the way to 80 or 90% of the way, and maybe want to change just a few things, I can go ahead and look for a few of these. If I had a fragment named Setup, which I always use in the top of my document, I can go ahead and insert it in there. And really, wherever the cursor itself is, this tool simply inserts it wherever the cursor is. If I had another fragment called Analysis, I can go ahead and find that, pulls it, and inserts it. You can see that this one uses a nice little image right here. And if I wanted to create anything below that or change any content, I can certainly go ahead and do that. And so beyond that, that's really the concept of fragments. Again, they can be thought of as building blocks for an application or a document or an experiment itself, just to get you from 60% to 80 or 90% of the way there. They're supposed to be collaborative features and also for personal use as well. Once they're inserted into the document, you can go ahead and change them, edit them, whatever you want to do. So moving more to the right within this ribbon, there's also the ability to add from the experiment itself supplementary files. So if I have anything on the network that I want to get access to, whether it's on my hard drive, on another computer, on a thumb drive, I can go ahead, access my file system, double-click on it, and it'll go ahead and associate it with this document. Now, these aren't, anything that is a supplementary file isn't necessarily signed, and in fact, it isn't signed at all or considered signed. It actually has to be imported directly into the document itself that you use to sign, export, convert to PDF or XPSS, and apply a digital signature. You can see the supplementary files attached. I can manage them by removing them. I can add more, or I can open it from here if I want to view the content of it. A couple of the other pieces here, relationships. So in terms of associating, if you have an assembly line type of procedure where there are other experiments directly associated with this experiment, or if two experiments simply have very similar concepts applied to them, you can go ahead and add relationships to them, which help improve findability and searchability. Some other interesting pieces here. If you happen to close Internet Explorer, the SharePoint site, you can quickly click this button, open the experiment. You can open up the notebook itself, or you can click this Properties button to show, manage, and update all the different metadata associated with this. Now that we've reviewed a number of the different pieces of this ribbon, we can actually go back to the signing component. Now, when we were looking into designing this solution, it was very, very important. One of the big business challenges was the overall time that it took to sign an experiment, and really making sure that the scientists it was an easy experience for them, so they didn't feel inconvenienced to sign, but also from a business perspective, obviously, it's very, very important to protect your intellectual property, make sure it's signed in case down the line you go into a patent case, and it could be a matter of minutes, it could be a matter of days, right, between you and another company of when exactly you came up with the conclusion that led to the product or the patent that you applied for. So we want to make sure that the signing process is absolutely as simple as possible. So really, if you're a scientist and you want to sign a document, it's simply a matter of providing your Active Directory password. And of course, this is very dependent upon the PKI infrastructure that you use. It could be associated with AD. It could be associated with a badge that you insert into your computer. It depends. So what this demo does, it's still working here. What this demo does is has a very simple back-end process that converts it to PDF and applies the digital signature. And certainly from Microsoft Word itself, you could additionally co-sign a document there. I think it's done. If we go back to the experiment site, we can refresh this site. And as soon as it refreshes, you'll see a signed experiment posted to it. There we go. So that's the signed experiment. If we go ahead and open this up, you'll see a PDF. And again, you know, we're using PDF. Certainly, XPS is also a viable format for you to use. Take a minute. There. You can see the first page here, the second page, which is exactly the experiment that I created, and a little digital signature applied. And really, it can be applied anywhere in a document. It can be applied on the first page. It can be applied on the last page. You could create fancy little signatures if that's important to you. It may be more of an aesthetic thing. But really the important thing is that it would have the user information of exactly who signed it without question and exactly when they signed it. Now, from an experience perspective, obviously, certain organizations require co-signing for compliance. But from the experience, we want to make co-signing, again, as simple as possible. So if I can just talk through how you would do that from the business, or how we've done it in the past, is after a signed experiment has been posted and the user may decide that they're ready for co-signing to happen, or maybe they wait a day, or they come back from lunch and they decide, yes, this experiment is done, I want to make sure that it's co-signed. Really, at that point is when you can use Windows Workflow, perhaps click a button on the page, go to a web page, assign who you would want to sign the document, and a task would be assigned to them. It could be emailed to them. They could have a task list within the ELN to see exactly what signing assignments they have to them. They could go to the PDF itself, review it, enter their password or whatever PKI infrastructure you have, click sign, and then another co-signed experiment would show up right here. Okay? Again, really what we wanted to focus on with this solution was the core interaction of an ELN to secure information, make it easy as possible for scientists to author information, make it easy for them to sign and move on and spend a majority of their day within the research lab, within analyzing, and they don't have to use more than 2% of their brain to actually manage the information that they're concluding. So what I'll do from there is go ahead and go back to the presentation. And there were just a couple other things that I wanted to touch on when we do get back to that. So, so you've seen the demo, and certainly as a business, there's a number of questions you have depending on what type of business that you run. If I think if it's a small to medium-sized research firm, the question of scalability might not be as prominent. But if you're a global enterprise company, research company, scalability obviously is a huge question. So, of course, this application is built directly within SharePoint. So a lot of the different architectural patterns that SharePoint has that's applied to outside the research industry has been applied in a number of different ways around the world. But really what that means from an experiment perspective is each notebook is based on a site collection. So each ELN can contain 150,000 different notebooks, and each notebook can contain upwards of 250,000 experiments. Now, these are just the guidelines that Microsoft applies. These aren't a hard stop. As soon as you hit 250,000, the application's going to stop working. That's just when they say you might start to experience degradation in performance. So it's actually a pretty surprising number, 150,000 notebooks and 250,000 experiments. And that's even before you start to need to consider applying an archiving solution to move active experiment off the ELN and more or less into a backup type of repository that could still be searchable through the ELN, but just not directly impacting the number of sites or the number of site collections that are provisioned. Another question that certainly has popped into the conversation and into my mind around building the solution is, what about reporting? So how do I know as a business that users are using the application appropriately, and really the goals of me investing in this application are being met? So certainly with this being a Microsoft application, we can build different reports on SQL Server reporting services. Certainly Performance Point pops to my mind as an interesting tool to help provide additional business intelligence if you were to have a management dashboard. And some of the questions that would pop into my mind would be, how many experiments were assigned a day? If I know I have 2,000 experiments, 2,000 scientists within the organization, and they're each creating an experiment, 2 experiments a day, I should know how many experiments to expect that are being provisioned, that are being signed, that are being moved to the system and taken care of. Another question that pops in my mind is, how often is co-signing happening? If I invested a lot in a very simplified experience for my scientists to co-sign, are they co-signing, right? And if they are, that's great. If not, perhaps I can apply different management techniques in order to get them to co-sign, in order to protect the critical information that my business requires to be stored. But overall, really the question that comes down to reporting is, are my compliance expectations being met by the application and by the users? Well, I think that's where my piece is done. I'm going to hand it back over to Bob Long right now. Bob?
Thank you, Sean. That was fantastic. I appreciate it very much. Good job. So as a matter of a couple of wrap-up points, we wanted to do a summary. And the solution obviously is addressing business needs through technology. And the idea that we can efficiently search experiments, we think, is foremost in the minds of those stakeholders at research organizations. And also the fact that existing investments can be grown. We made mention of Office and SharePoint being a foundation here. Very, very important. And also wanted to indicate our connected systems capability was one of our practices we think is key in tying an organization together and allowing collaboration and getting data from place to place and in fact, turning it into information for business purposes. And then finally, that Neudesic is quite experienced with the process change involved in this. And Sean in particular, Sean in particular has been through that with our key client, company called Neudesic. And then thanking you for today. We're going to have a little Q&A session just here in a second. Beth from Microsoft will conduct that. And then we'd ask you to stick around. We're going to have some evaluation questions at the end. But before we go to that, I did want to make sure that you were aware of some possible next steps we'd like to entertain. Our contact information will be available. We'll be sending out this slide deck in a PDF format, so you'll have continued contact with us and a means to reach us through several avenues. But we're offering an ELN readiness assessment on-site for clients, and we would come in for what is necessary, half a day or a day, and evaluate what the possibilities are and produce for you a summary of what we see and how we might be able to best meet your needs. And of course, if you want to take a bigger step, we can produce a statement of work to represent cost for a one-week assessment. We'll move directly into a pilot. And what you see represented there at the bottom graphically is the pipeline. That's what we want to help you with, help your business move your research and your products through that pipeline. And again, here are the presenters. I put both Sean's and my email there for you. And I think this will be the right time then to take questions from the audience. And I'm going to give the floor to Beth.
Great. Thank you very much, Bob. And great presentation, gentlemen. We do actually have a couple of questions that came in through the Q&A manager. Let me go ahead and read those out loud for you. The first one is, what if you continue with the saved experiment? Is it a new version and a new PDF created, or do you append the incremental information in a new PDF?
Right. Yeah, that's a great question. This is Sean. I'll take that one. So the idea of the Word document or the experiment journal itself is that it's a living document. So each time that you want to save it, it'll create a brand new PDF with all of the additional information appended and save it back to a document library with an additional version. So if you are a patent attorney and you want to find what is the absolute earliest date in which we discovered or came to this conclusion around this patent, you can look through the versions. But the idea is that, yes, each time that you find a new version, a brand new PDF is created as a new version and saved back to SharePoint. And then the experiment journal itself is a living, breathing document that continues on.
Great. Thank you, Sean.
Sure.
So our next question is, did you consider using OneNote instead of Word?
Yes, another good question. Certainly the use of OneNote came up a number of times within our conversations with businesses and also within Microsoft. But the fact of the matter is that a lot of the desires to use Microsoft Word in particular, there's actually two things. So the first thing is that the fact that it's actually built on OpenXML technology. So if you have interesting information within your experiments, you could actually query that from different reporting services, from Performance Point, to actually pull information directly from that document through the XML. It's also the XML is good for compliance standards. OneNote isn't there yet within the Office platform. So that's one reason why we didn't use OneNote. But also the second reason that we did use Microsoft Word is that it actually presents more of a controlled canvas for scientists to author their documents. So when you convert it from Word to PDF or XPSS, it's more of a guarantee in exactly what output you're going to get. With OneNote, it's really just a wide canvas. So the conversion process would be concerning because it could accidentally cut off some important information that your scientists wrote down as a conclusion.
Great. Thanks, Sean.
Sure.
Let me read you the next question. Can you please describe the audit trail of changes made to the data in the notebook?
The audit trail of changes made to the data in the notebook. Sure. Really, it's leveraging SharePoint's audit trails out of the box. So if you were to go in and look at the different versions of the file itself, it would show you a date timestamp and a version number of each of the different documents, as well as a link to the document, so you could go back in time and actually pull up the document itself. Interesting things that you could add to the solution if your business desires it would be version comment. So if you were to save or sign a document, you would ask for a couple sentences from the scientist to say, in essence or in summary, what did I change? Now, this is additional metadata that could help your business find previous versions of an experiment more quickly.
Great, thanks, Sean. And another question that just came in. What about times when I need to use Excel?
Right. So, interestingly, one of our original proofs of concept for this ELN was actually built on Excel. So Excel with the OpenXML technology is you are certainly capable of building experiments in that. I just wanted to get that out there for the first part of answering this question. Again, the reason we went to Word was more with that controlled canvas. But whatever integration features Excel has with Microsoft Word, which are very, very extensive, you can use and leverage. So in essence, whenever you sign and convert a document, it will just take a snapshot of that document as data itself and convert it to PDF and sign it, or XPSS.
Right. Another question is, how does this ELN help facilitate productivity gains?
Mm-hmm. I think a couple things there. Really, some of the solutions that we came up with to help productivity would be so a scientist doesn't have to spend their lives, if for example, if you still use paper notebooks within your organization, if it's so a scientist doesn't have to start from scratch every single time, we came up with a concept of templates, which will get them 60% of the way there. So a scientist doesn't have to actually take scissors out with glue sticks and actually paste images into a notebook or write by hand everything that they need to do. The benefits of using Microsoft Word to type, importing images from exports from the different lab pieces of equipment, and also using fragments, which again are simple building blocks to get you 80–90% of the way there. So, for example, if just to take an easy example, if a scientist spent 10 hours documenting, authoring, and coming to an experiment, we're hoping through the use of templates, through the use of fragments, and through all of the additional features available out of the box from Microsoft Word, that will actually eliminate, 7 to 8 hours worth of time just through manual labor. Now, those numbers haven't been researched, but just through conversations at a high level, those are kind of the swag numbers that I came up with.
Right. Is there also a way to integrate with other scientific systems?
Absolutely. There are a number of additional components relating to the chemistry industry or whatever industry you're in that are actually available immediately off of CodePlex. So those offer a lot of integration features and also a lot of nice to haves around, for example, drawing out different organisms or other little specificities to the industry, integrating with other lab equipment. Now, really it depends on the individual piece of equipment. If there are other applications that have web services exposed, really SharePoint itself its whole architecture is based on web services. So if you can communicate with another piece of equipment, either through web services, through COM, certainly that integration point can be built out. It would just take some research and some analysis from experts in the industry.
Thanks, Sean. And I do have another one. I want to go ahead and read that. Have you leveraged any of the smart tag capabilities in Word?
Mm-hmm. Right. We actually have through nothing in production yet, but just sort of through trial and error in our back end. Certainly smart tags is a very powerful feature. I know that metadata only goes so far. So, for example, if you have different properties associated with an experiment, for example, your name, the experiment number, the date, we have in the past leveraged smart tags in a controlled environment to be able to apply them and insert them directly into an experiment.
That's great. And I do have a final question for you. Are there advantages for groups or individuals that are not directly connected to the research itself?
Absolutely. So, again, I think that goes back to your question around security. Should people who aren't directly associated with the work itself have access to the documents? And I guess the answer is yes. If there is a business need for that, certainly if they are part of the Active Directory structure, then they can go ahead and access that as long as proper security is set up. Now, what pops into my mind, for example, would be the role of patent attorney or your legal department or a COO, for example, making sure that the system is being leveraged. So they might have a management dashboard where they actually can't directly access the experiment information themselves, but they could access the metrics that or the metadata that goes along with those experiments in order to monitor the system, make sure from a management perspective that it is being properly utilized.
Great, thanks, Sean. Well, we had some great questions for this presentation. I'd like to leave the floor open for just a second to allow attendees to type in any other questions they might have. So hang tight for about 5 seconds. And meanwhile, I'd like to remind you that the contact details are listed on the screen being shown. And feel free to send questions to any of those folks listed. At this point in time, I think we're going to do some evaluation polling slides, so I'd like to turn the floor back over to Bob.
Fantastic. Thank you, Beth, and thank you, Sean. We appreciate everyone's questions. First question, was this helpful to your business? We'll give you a moment to answer. And Beth, you may actually need to tell me how to advance.
Oh, you bet. I can help you drive, no problem.
I was looking for an arrow. Is it the same set of arrows?
Yep, you're looking good. People are responding. That's great. Great. Looks like the content was very helpful. Would you like me to roll over to the second slide?
Yes, please.
You bet. There you go.
Give me some good grades, everybody.
While you're doing that, we definitely want to thank you. We've run a little over, but we did have excellent questions. Appreciate your time and are very excited about the possibility of following up with you and getting into detail and knowing your business and proceeding with one of the options that we have there as next steps.
Great, and I just forward us to the third polling question.
Thank you, Beth.
And we just have one more after that, and we're good to go. All right, getting some good results. That's great. And here's the fourth one. Great. So, Bob and Sean, if you don't have any other closing remarks, we can turn the floor back over to Katie.
Thank you, Beth. Katie, on to you.
Great. Well, I would just like to wrap up. I know we're a little bit over the hour mark, but thank you both, Sean and Bob, so much for your presentation today. We will be forwarding out both the slide deck and the recorded version of this presentation when it becomes available. It takes just about a week's time to be able to send it out to everyone. So I want everyone to know that they will have it in their email box within the next 7 days. Again, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you on our next webcast. You are now all able to disconnect.